What's happening, everybody? Well, if you've got a vintage motorcycle, chances are this is a view you're going to see a lot more often than you may have anticipated for. And for things that you never thought you would ever have to be working on anything to fix. But to be fair, guys, that's part of the fun and the allure of having one of these vintage motorcycles. And let's be honest, that work that you're putting into the bike is really giving you a lot better understanding and an appreciation for the machine that you're piloting. So let me bring you guys up to speed as far as what I'm working on this thing. Okay guys, so when last we were chatting, the issue that I had was that I had fuel that was basically dribbling out from around what looked like this threaded insert on a plastic gas tank. Well, as it turns out, it may have been several things leaking in the same area. So what have we done here? Well, I have epoxied the inside of the tank by having to go through the fuel plate around and then back that way. If you haven't seen that video, that's a real barnstormer. Anyway, also it looks like there may have been a small little bitty crack right here on the gas tank. So what I did is I took some of that plastic epoxy, that fuel safe plastic epoxy, and did an epoxy fiberglass epoxy method there. Basically, it's just built up like crazy right there. And we've got a new gasket behind that fuel plate thanks to our friends over at Triumph Houston. So that's what we're up to. Oh yes, and of course I could never talk about a fuel system teardown without saying always remember to switch out your O-rings, which I did. I think these are 7.9 by 1.9 rings that are on this thing, just in case you guys needed to know. And of course, it would not be a fuel system check if I didn't give the obligatory prime check. There you go, no leaks, everything is nice and dry. So if you do find yourself working on one of these Triumphs, just a quick note, yes, the torque value for that fuel plate is 6 Newton meters, basically 4.5 foot-pounds, and I would use that same value for these little guys too. And guys, this is one of those areas where you do not want to be really grinding in there with your wrench or with your ratchet. There's no sense in that. It doesn't take a whole lot of torque to get everything to fit properly. If you over torque it, what'll happen, well, let me get you closer and I'll show you, is that these threaded inserts that you see here, well, they're basically just fiberglassed or epoxied into the tank. There's a little cutout in the back that allows that to slip in, and of course it's adhesed in there. If you go too heavy, what you can do is you can, if you are lucky and you screw this up the right way, you will just pop that threaded insert and you won't have a leak. If you are unlucky, then what will happen is that threaded insert will take the nipple that it is adhesed to and it'll just crack it, and that'll cause a leak. So mind your torque specs. It can save you a whole lot of headaches. Guys, one other thing that I did while I had this tank off is I went over the whole thing and I reinforced some areas that had been scuffed with epoxy. Now, the reason why I did that, again, these bikes have a plastic gas tank, and it's not like a metal tank where if you hit it or scrape it or whatever, you can just dent the metal or it scratches the paint. You can actually gouge the plastic and it'll make it a bit of a soft spot. So what I did is I went over the entire tank, gave it a little bit of a, just say a little bit of a coating of epoxy while I was at it. A little bit of a reinforcement goes a long way and hopefully will prevent further leaks in the future. Oh yeah, one other thing. Yes, I did use a star pattern when I was tightening that fuel plate. So I just did center, center, out, 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 and then went crisscross applesauce that way. So yes, I did use a multi-step star pattern when I retorqued that gasket to the tank. Keeping in mind, it's a plastic tank. Don't think you'd warp it, but anyway, best practices, right? All right, guys, I got to finish putting this thing back together. Looks like she's high and dry in terms of leaks, so yay. Anyway, post up your comments. Let me know what you think about this motorcycle content. These old vintage bikes are a lot of fun. Let me know if you've got one and if you're working on one. And with that, that's a wrap.